Thanks for tuning into the Salt Block. If you like this video, hopefully you like the others. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.
We will no longer be the free world. We'll be slaves like everybody else under communism, under socialism, revolutions, and this nation will be destroyed. And that's why America must be taken out. And that's what they're doing right now. Both parties have been working towards that effort. Extreme right, extreme left, liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. Polarization. The founding father was a bunch of hypocrites.
They didn't even live up to
They didn't follow up their own creed, but the creed was greater than themselves. We never had a democracy. The controlled masses, they vote for their party, but the informed, they vote according to issues and policies. So I think people need to come to a resolve that whatever they believe, they need to carry that out to the fullness of their creed and not be hypocrites in the voting booth, at the voting polls. Whatever they believe, that's fine, but they need to live to the fullness of that creed. As you well know, the 2024 presidential election is closely at hand. The boiling point is already here. We've already seen evidently an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. We've seen the boiling point of people and their ideas and ideologies dividing this country like never before. It's almost like what Martin King said, that one way to keep the ignorant masses under their control during and after the Civil War is to turn the poor people and the ignorant against one another while the oligarchs control them. Martin King said that if that the poor whites, the oligarchs or the aristocracy gave them a bird, and that bird was called Jim Crow. It kept the poor whites happy. The poor whites also felt pride because as long as they were a Negro. But they were looked down as well. Looked down upon, that is, they were called white trash. Whether you're a Negro or white trash, the aristocracy manipulated the masses. And such is today. The media, propaganda, and our television networks has set everything in action that have this tumultuous point that we can no longer be civil when we have political opinions that disagree with one another. What do you think about that?
It feels like a very familiar exercise because we're living through it right now. You mentioned the division. The people can't seem to see eye to eye on any issue. There's really no middle ground. It's either hot or cold.
Hot or cold.
You will be
extreme right, extreme left, liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. Polarization to divide and
conquer, which they have done successfully quite a few times. And again, in that process of dividing and conquering, I think Dr. Michael Brown, the well-known apologist, you probably seen or heard some of his teachings. He wrote a book once upon a time. It was called, I can't remember if it has a subtitle, but You Will Be Made to, something like You Will Be Made to Decide, or you'll be forced to pick a side is essentially what he was saying. But based on the temperature of the current culture between the LGBTQ movement, you name it, abortion, big government versus small government, there's really no middle ground, and it's just pushing people to polar opposites, and they're taking full advantage of that. And you mentioned in your example that you just shared, once people are kind of too busy fighting each other to realize what's really going on, it's easy to manipulate the masses, and I feel like we're living in that.
Well, somewhere I read that a divided house cannot stand. And I know that people oftentimes use the Gettysburg Address on behalf of Abraham Lincoln, who made that statement. But of course, he was quoting Jesus. In Matthew chapter 12, Jesus said that concerning the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. And we're going to talk about right now what people can do to chill and to get educated and informed so they won't be manipulated like puppets and controlled through the media and their political parties and the pimps in the pulpit and the hirelings in Hollywood, as well as in our cause of justice, that they can look to see how our nation functions according to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. So when CNN or Fox or MSNBC, when all the networks, of course, when they present a lie, you can know from the Constitution that they're lying to you and not putting your leg to take their bait and to take their cheese and get caught in their trap. and people can see all the stuff going on in our borders, all the things going on in our cities, all the things that are happening, and yet they still vote the same way by default. And whatever state this country winds up in the conclusion, no one can blame a politician, but everyone must blame themselves. Because this is supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And if people don't want to lead and they don't want to govern themselves, then the government will govern you. And that, my friend, is what's happening. We must come together. And the whole nation, churches and politicians, all must repent. Otherwise, we will have this new world order and one world government real soon. And we will have a dictator.
Yep.
And we will have a leader. And the Bible calls that man the Antichrist. It's going to happen. But the question is, how soon do you want it? You want to lie down and let things happen? Or do you want to stand up and put up the armor of faith, right?
The whole armor of God.
And fight the good fight of faith, as the scriptures say. But the first thing that you want to need to do, let me give you a formula. This formula I kind of wrote down is that how to defend yourself from lying propaganda. Number one, you must know some basic historical facts. So you must know at least what the Constitution says about certain things. Number two, you also must look at unbiased news sources. Take a consortium of them and compare the stories to make sure that you're not biased. And only not walk in a concept that's called confirmation bias. You only look at networks that will confirm whatever you want to believe. Look at the opposing views too to develop your critical thinking skills.
Which is why a lot of people tend to fall into that category nowadays. Probably why we're so divided, because people do have that confirmation bias. It's almost like people with itching ears in the Bible. They're looking for teachers and doctrines that will satisfy their lust.
Scratch that ear.
Exactly.
Tell them what you want to know.
Tell me what you want to
what you want to do.
What hear,
Tell what I want to hear. And this is also called cognitive dissonance. In my years, I've been teaching social science now for about almost 45 years. Okay. And in the social sciences and psychology, we look at the area that's called cognitive dissonance. It's like, don't bore me with the facts because my mind is already made up.
They're not really there to learn.
They're not there to learn. They don't want to know. They don't want to hear. Don't tell me nothing about the conservative view, or I don't want to hear about the liberals. And so we're so alienated, we're so polarized. Why? Because we're in our willful camps of ignorance, not understanding either that unless you can articulate and argue both sides, you don't understand your own belief system.
And it makes it very hard to reason if you're not willing to come to the table and at least hear the other side.
That's not like a Bible verse. The Bible says, let us come and reason together, saith the Lord. Let us have peace and harmony. We may not be harmonious, but we can at least have peace. Yeah. We can agree to disagree. And however, that has not been our plight, because another element that people suffer from is called normacy bias. They can't believe, or we can't believe things could happen, or America could change, or we can go from a type of government we have to a communist government overnight. What is happening right before the very eyes, as we looked at previously by dystopia, whereby which the people are so drowned in their lust and their ideals and their philosophies, and also almost hypnotized to be consumed by their own desires, narcissistic pleasures and drugs and sex, that they pay no attention to what's going on, don't have time to be informed because all their time is spent in social media and also video games, never look at reality, having their head in the sand and the buttocks sticking up, like I said before.
Getting there.
Which is not good.
They're getting their dopamine fix, basically just getting their highs on media. Distractions. Any form of distraction will work, and any will work. It's a good distraction if it continues to work. Right.
So let's look at some of the things about our government, the basic knowledge. Number one, here's an example. Recently, back in 2020, in San Francisco, there was a mob, about 40 people, gathered around the statue of Ulysses S. Grant, right? And they tore it down and defaced the statue of Grant, because he was a Civil War general. Do you find something appalling about that? How the ignoramus young people we have today, gathering around, tearing down a statue of President, eventually General Ulysses S. Grant. Do you remember his significance?
Well, he certainly was on the winning side.
Oh, Who's winning side?
Well, the North, and there were a lot of.
Oh, the North! My good God Almighty, on the North, huh?
But you get a bunch of
So he actually ended the Civil War. Appomattox called General Lee, Robert E. Lee, to surrender Appomattox, and these ignoramus college students, right, gathered to tear down because it was Civil War statue.
Exactly.
They have no idea what's going on.
They're looking at the
Help me,
uniform.
somebody.
They're looking at
These children are messed up today.
Yeah, well, you work with them. I mean,
hush your mouth.
not to put your students on the block.
Well, I think most Americans probably could not pass a literacy test associated with civics, how our government works. In fact, most Americans don't even know what type of government we have. Our lying politicians come on every night seeming to say that we must save our democracy. We must save our democracy. However, you know, and I know, we never had a democracy.
Thank God.
Never have.
Correct.
So can you tell our beloved audience what type of government we have?
It's a republic.
Oh, for which it stand. One nation, under God, with liberty and what? Justice for all.
Yep. But it's a democratic process that we get to cast our votes. But yeah, it's a representative republic, and there's a reason every state gets certain amounts of delegates and the whole 9 yards. Things that you will learn on a standard
civic class. I invite and encourage every parent, if you have no children, get a simple 7th grade civics book or 9th grade civics book, a U.S. government textbook, and just learn about your country. So when you're lying media and use their propaganda to divide and conquer, you won't take debate. And we're going to look at some of those examples today. But first, let me look at how our government is structured. Number one, we have a democratic republic. A republic, we have a representative government, but we vote for those representatives. That's a democratic process.
Right.
But the government we have is a republic, not a democracy. Democracy is ruled by the majority. The majority wins, 51%. Mm-hmm. That's the worst form of government. It's a mob form of government because in the democracy, the 49% always lose and they're never represented. That's what Greece had, and that's why Greece collapsed and failed because of their system.
And in this country, you would have, let's say, they always use this example, but farmers, for example, they have very different goals, different aspirations based on where they live, based on the type of work they do, than someone who lives on, let's say, New York City. And if you have a majority of the votes coming from the East Coast and the far West Coast,
by population
in New York, because
right.
of the density of the population,
right.
The people in the middle, they get snuffed out. They don't have a voice.
No voice.
They don't have any.
They will succeed from the union.
Yeah.
So we have no representation.
Exactly.
All right. And also, with that being said, blacks want to make 12% of the population, and they say this is a racist country. If we're such a racist country, we're only 12%. That includes babies and everybody. 12% of the population. How could Obama become the president? A black man with only 12%. That's almost 1 out of every 10. That's not that many. So it got to be the majority white votes for him as well.
But
so.
Can we pause there for a second? Because people
don't put on brakes. All right, talk to
me. People like to say we are a racist country.
Okay.
First of all, show me a country in the world that is not racist. If you are gonna attribute a label to the individuals of the country, then by all means, sin is sin, and there are racist people everywhere. Now you hear the term systematic racism thrown into the equation. There obviously was a time and a period where Americans had slaves. There will always be people who are racist. But
always be murderers.
Yeah, you're never gonna have
kill the brother,
society
can't kill
where
Abel, children killing their parents.
Yeah,
murderers.
It's a byproduct of sin. So yes, you can say we're a racist country, but we're a country with racist people. However, is the system bent and geared towards racism?
It's not institutionalized, you're saying.
Exactly.
That's what it was before.
All the barriers have been lowered, and that was taking place from the Civil Rights era. And yes, you have bad actors, but there is not a system in place that is forcing racism and racist practices upon people. If anything, it's kind of over-rotated, and you're starting to see a little racism. Yeah.
Yeah, to extreme.
Just the other way around.
Well, first, our government, you want to pass a civic test to know the basics, to dispel all the lies that CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, these are the Democratic stations. Newsmax, you have also maybe Fox. They are more the conservative networks. But if you want to do a check and balance yourself and not bite in anyone's cheese, first you need to know there are 3 branches of a government. There's the executive branch, that is the president, all right? There is the legislative branch, that's Congress. There are 2 parts, the House and the Senate. And then there's the judicial branch. The judicial branch is the referee. It interprets the laws that Congress makes. The president is the enforcer of the laws. He doesn't make the laws. He carries out and enforces the laws.
The executor.
He's the executor, the executive head of the system, right? He uses all of his cabinet members, all of the, 6 million or so individuals associated with the military, Department of Defense, Department of Interior, Department of HUD, all of these branches, Homeland Security, they all work under the president. And what they do is they carry out the laws that are passed by Congress.
Right.
Congress is the one who makes the laws. It has two parts to it so that one part cannot have dominion over the other. So a check and balance on it. There's two parts, bicameral, bi meaning two parts Congress, checks and balance. The president, he can also have executive orders, but he can be overridden by Congress and by the Supreme Court. Or you also have the Supreme Court, they can interpret the laws, but Congress can add an amendment to the Constitution, and Congress can impeach the president, right? And Congress can also impeach members of the judiciary. So we have a check and balance. So when all the lying politicians, all the popheads are pothead politicians, come on, right? Because they smoke some strong ganja, because they know that the American people will fall for their lies, who they know that they don't understand much how government functions. Even these basics, they say some of the most outlandish things. I just laugh, but then I cry. But I said, so sad that people believe this stuff, and they going to at each other's throat.
They get away with it. They get away with it.
It's amazing.
There's no one, but that's the thing. They're never held in check by the media, who used to. Their job was to make sure that politicians were on the up and up. They could do some investigative journalism. They have some license to go and call people to the carpet and further investigate and expose the people to what's going on. But the media is kind of in the back pocket.
We don't have any media anymore.
Exactly. They're either on the right side or the left side or the red side or the blue side.
It is propaganda. It's either one network is for Trump or the other is against Trump, or for Biden or against Biden. That's not media. That's propaganda machines.
Exactly.
That's not news. That's propaganda feeding people what they want to hear to get ratings so they can sell commercials, and also feeding the audience to divide and conquer. And also the ignorant masses, they take the bait every time.
Yeah. That's their confirmation bias.
Yeah, let me ask you this here. What do you think is the most powerful branch? The most powerful branch out of the three. The executive branch, which is the president, the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court, or is it the legislative branch that makes laws? Which is the most powerful?
I would say technically that's a little question, because I can say the judicial, because they're ultimately the ones who are interpreting the laws, and they interpret the Constitution. However, the people have the people have the power to.
So you reason this out.
Yes, I'm talking out live here. The people have the power to demand certain things of their leaders, demand certain things of their representation. And if the ideas are good enough, they will stick, they will get voted. Constitutional amendments have been made, can be made. And ultimately, it's the will of the people. Everybody in D.C. reports to the people, to we the people, and the people have all the power. So because that power is kind of lent to the government, I would say that the legislative branch has a lot of power in my mind.
The legislative branch, Congress, is the most powerful branch. It makes the laws that the president must enforce.
Right.
And then the Supreme Court only interprets.
To make sure they're legit.
Yeah. That's it. And so when they're talking about the president this and the president this, Congress is AWOL on the job, and putting all the blame on the executive branch was a lie.
Who has the least amount of power?
The least amount. Well,
to a certain degree.
To a certain degree. He is the chief executive. He does have a lot of power.
Yeah.
But Congress can corral him in, can fire him by impeachment, and a lot of other things as well. It is also, the way it's supposed to be run is that we're supposed to be the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. The people, we elect people to represent us. Not for the politicians to tell us what to do.
Exactly.
And because people have been negligent, not voting and not proactive in their civil responsibilities and civil duties, like voting, also like serving on the jury and all these things, consequently, our government gets a pass, and the politicians sit there, and then they begin to manipulate, and through other individuals higher than them who pay their salaries indirectly through campaign financing, manipulate, control them against the people. So now we have a war going on. The government itself is going against the people for the politicians controlled by outside forces and people we never see. So there are two types of judges, though. I must add this to the mix. There are two types of judges. There's another war going on. There are constitutional judges, right? And Republicans seem to favor those judges, like Trump put 3 justices there that favor supporting the Constitution. That's how it's supposed to be.
Constitutionalists.
Mm-hmm. The Democratic Party seem to favor what is called activist judges. An activist judge is a judge who does not make laws based on the Constitution, but what they think is right. And so now you have a war going on in the judiciary. In the judiciary, you're the wacko judges passing laws and decrees and also adjudicating cases, and they don't even believe in going by the Constitution.
Well, because these judges, the ones you're talking about, these activist judges are oftentimes people who think the Constitution is probably heard referred to as a living, breathing document that it kind of ebbs and flows with culture and society, and it's not this foundational bedrock that many people on the conservative side think the Constitution is. That's why the term constitutionalist is even around, because certain judges will say they squarely align themselves to what was written by the founding fathers, and any law that comes across their desk, any rule, any judgment they have to make, they measure it up against something. It almost kind of reminds me of how you measure
it's like if you're going to build a house, you use a ruler, right?
Or a
plumb line, right? And this is your solid foundation, and you have a standard you go by. But if you make your rules up, what happens when the referee in a football game or a basketball game decides I don't believe that's out of bounds, and begin to change the rules in the middle of the game? That's what activist judges do. That's what the Democratic Party favor, because if you can't get it passed through Congress, if you can't get it past the president, you can try to slide it through the judiciary. And that's why the Democratic Party now wants to stack the court to add at least 3 or 4 more justices to the Supreme Court. Just like what happened during the Roosevelt administration, FDR tried to do the same during the time of the Great Depression.
Well, yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that you bring up a point, because I know a lot of people are concerned about, let's say there's a power change, leadership change. Joe Biden's not reelected. Donald Trump becomes the next president, or gets reelected president, and all of a sudden the older Supreme Court justices, Clarence Thomas, for example, they can just retire, and guess who gets to appoint new judges?
Whoever's in office.
So the president can elect 2 more, or can nominate 2 more Supreme Court justices that are probably going to be constitutionalists because of his track record of nominating judges like that. And then you get someone who's young enough, you got a 30, 40-year-old judge who's considered on that bench, and they're a judge for life until they either retire or they die. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't like the fact that the next president is probably going to have the power to appoint at least 2 more judges, and it's already a conservative group, but it'll be strengthened because they'll have potentially more constitutionalists on deck.
Well, our queen pontiff, I call her, AOC, she wants to impeach a couple of the judges right now and get them removed. And there are also others, our socialists.
That's a Hail Mary. You're saying she wants them
right now
during this term.
And then we also have our socialists dictate. Bernie Sanders, a socialist, had the Socialist Party, would join the Democratic Party to make the new Democratic Socialist Party. That's what we have no longer a Democratic Party. It's the Socialist Party, a Communist Party. And so what we have now, the extreme, that's why you have to divide and conquer. That's what Karl Marx's idea was. You must create revolution. You must create Hegelian dialectic distraction and division, the rich versus the poor, the blacks against the whites. You must all forms of division so that you can create revolution to change the society. And so with that being said, they must destroy the Constitution. That is their goal, right? And they must set up a new form of government. That is what they're working towards. Who's in their way? Trump.
Who's they?
The globalists, those who believe in a one world government with the United Nations being the global legislative body, with the World Court in The Hague become the World Judiciary, which is the World Court, also the World Criminal Court located in Rome. That's all under the UN. And then you have your global executive, your Secretary General of the United Nations. So that's your world government. You have a world court, you have a world executive, That person is called the Secretary General of the United Nations. And then you have also the global legislative body, the United Nations.
So it sounds like the system is already in place from the way you're describing it.
Correct.
So why is America such a thorn in the side of the system?
Because
it seems like, I mean, everyone else in the world apparently is already on board with this plan, the way you're making it sound. Why does America have to be the last domino to fall?
Because America is called the leader of the free world. And literally that. There's no country in human history, not even in the Bible. America's government is even set up better than the law. The law was set up specifically for the Jews, but America was created for a free society. In God we would trust, but with some, foundational principle, Judeo-Christian principles, laying a foundation with equity for all, even though the founding father was a bunch of hypocrites.
They didn't even live up to
They didn't follow up their own creed, but the creed was greater than themselves. And they've been dead 2 centuries, right? 200 years. However, the standard is still there. If we hold strong to the standard, America will survive. If not, we will no longer be leader of the free world. We'll be slaves like everybody else under communism, under socialism, revolutions, and this nation will be destroyed. And that's why America must be taken out. And that's what they're doing right now. Both parties have been working towards that effort. Let me give you a quick quiz. You ready?
Sure.
Civics quiz, based on what we said so far. Can Trump, based on what I said so far, can Trump become a dictator in America? Yay or nay? What do you say?
I mean, obviously, the system's in place. There are all types of checks and balances.
MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC all said this week that based on Supreme Court ruling, they have just made Trump a dictator.
I didn't realize they could declare him a dictator.
Well,
no, obviously, he can't be a dictator because that would assume that a lot of people have failed at their job. Checks and balances exist for a reason. There's not even a chance that he would go down that path for a million different reasons, which we don't have time to talk about today. But it's hyperbolic speech, people exaggerating, inflating things just to whip people into a frenzy, maybe to get them not thinking rationally and to take advantage of the ignorant masses.
Take advantage of them because that is only a question for the dummies who know nothing about our government. We have three branches of government, checks and balances, right? Each can reel the other ones in one way or another. No one in the president, his job is only to enforce the laws. That's his job. In Congress, for example, back in 2006, there was a law. It's called the Secure Offense Act. Okay, in the Secure Offense Act, President Trump tried to enforce that, but the law was passed by the House and the Senate, with Obama and Hillary Clinton voting for it, and Republican President George Bush signed off on it. It became the law in 2006. You can look it up. 10 years later, Trump becomes president. Trump moves to do his job, enforce the law. What do they call him? A racist? Because he tried to enforce the law. Congress could have stopped Trump in his tracks. How? All they have to do is repeal or rescind the 2006 Secure Offense Act. But they did not. Why? Because they wanted to milk it as much as possible, create as much as divide as possible, label him a racist. And look what's happened now that the Democrats are back in power and the borders are not secure. Is it a racial issue? No, it's a full-scale invasion of all of our enemies that they have allowed with the Trojan horse type dynamic, and all hell is about to bust loose in America. And one day we're going to wake up and we're going to see, by God, what have we done? In our ignorance, we allowed this to happen because we, the people, did not rule the nation. We let these people, politicians, run our country for us. We have no one to blame but ourselves and our willful ignorance.
Yeah, we've been put to sleep, anesthetized. I mean, but the God of pleasure, whatever it is, they're taking advantage of people's vitriol and hatred towards each other. Instead of, you don't have leaders coming out there fanning or putting wet blankets on the flames. They're fanning the flames. They're making them worse. Just the way they talk about each other, it just causes more division. Yeah, it causes more people to literally just ignore their other brother, and they go into their little echo chambers. They stay around the people who think like them and act like them, and that's all they focus on. That's all they cleave to. And then the next thing you know, you have some serious consequences on your hands.
You see, the media has fed these trigger words. I'm going to talk about how psychology comes into play right here. It's called mind control of the ignorant masses. You give them words. You keep repeating these phrases and words over and over again. Racist, racist. You know, Trump was a Democrat all his life until he ran for president, so I don't know what they're talking about. He loved black folks, and he loved them. He was
both ways.
in the business until he became a president, and now he labeled a racist. And all these dumb people walk around saying he's a racist.
But if you ask him why?
Do you know Trump? How you know he's a racist? Because when people come across the border, they're coming across illegally. I don't want them to come across it. I'm not a racist. All right? So in other words, willfully ignorant, trigger words, psychosis, methods to use in mind control that you get the ignorant masses as you hoard them and steer the direction you want to go. Repeat what they've been told like parrots, not having critical thinking skills. But one thing I say about the wall is this. Only major problem I have with the wall itself, no matter who does it, is they building the wall to keep people out. Guess what?
Makes it a little
they also
easier to keep people in.
They build the wall to keep people in. Made for these smart cities one day. You can't get out of here.
That sounds like some sinister tinfoil hat conspiracy theory conversations. Like what I've heard people say it, and the U.S. has a track record of flipping the switch, and overnight you're like, what happened? The system was already set up. It was in place the entire time, hidden in plain sight, and then when the right opportunity or the right situation comes up,
fully implement.
Exactly.
You set things in place, you set precedents, you set laws, Supreme Court cases, and then when it happens, they're already the law, and you didn't know they were already in place. The world government's already in place. The global structure, global executive, global judicial, and global legislative body already in place. But most Americans even know, even global army, the multinational forces set in place by George Bush by invading Iraq, already in place. Everything's there. But the American people don't even know what type of government we have. They still say we have a democracy. But they've been lied to by the lying politicians like parrots. They repeat the same thing over and over again. They never had a democracy. Well, say that again.
What's the quote? 66% of people couldn't even pass a standard
civic test.
The test that's required for U.S. citizenship.
Yeah,
I think we could.
I think that's generous.
Yeah,
because I look at the adults in all sectors and students, college students. They can't, child, please. My Lord, help us. We're in bad shape. You know, one thing I can say is that could Trump become a dictator? Answer obviously no. That is he there to enforce laws.
You're
answering make the laws.
You're answering questions that the media throws out.
Correct. These are the media like say to people in this past couple of weeks, and people are buying and taking the cheese and taking the bait. They get caught in the rat trap of propaganda. I do notice here that the globalists, they yank people around because they know that they don't know very much about our government. The Great Cover-Up, for example, how with disinformation, they've been lying about Biden's health for 6 years. All right. Fox News been covering for 6 years about President Biden's mental health waning.
Decline.
All right. And what happened is that they had to do something critically fast because he's gotten so bad. I've been showing my students for years, especially in Australian television and many others in the BBC, showing how they show gaffes, how our president be saying stuff out of his mind, making words that don't exist in nobody's language, right? And this has been going on for years, but they've been hiding him. And they had to bring him out now. They had to, because they could not wait until the debate that was scheduled for September, which is about 6 weeks before the election, to show what they're showing now. So they moved the debate up from September to June. That's how bad he is.
Get out ahead of it.
So they can have something in place before the convention in August. They've been lying to the American people and all those lying networks that people listen to.
But that goes back to your earlier statement about how they use the media to manipulate people to accomplish their ultimate objective.
Goals and objectives.
Yeah, and I think that it was for the first time ever. You mentioned that first debate. I thought it was hilarious because I've never watched CNN for longer than I needed to. But as soon as the debate ended, my natural instinct was to either go to X or Twitter or find an alternative news source and just find out what people are saying about the debate, because I know what my reaction was, and I'm sure it was shared by everyone. The statistics bear that out. But I let my TV linger on CNN for a little too long, and I was shocked to find out what they were saying about Joe Biden, his performance, the fact that he needs to go immediately.
This has been going on for 6 years.
Why are they acting surprised as if he had been doing this?
They're not surprised. They've been lying to the American people all the time to keep it under wraps.
They were pretending to be surprised.
But what they were pretending, they knew it all the time.
Exactly.
Right? But they did not want to show their audiences. So you looked at CNN, you looked at MSNBC, you never would have seen any of this here. And all the other things I can tell you that they keep from the people, that's why they keep people divided.
Yeah.
You must look at all the news sources, compare and contrast, and use critical thinking skills to analyze for yourself what is truth and what's a lie.
Well, I think you talk about the media. I will say Elon Musk, for all of his flaws, and he's an interesting character, very, very smart man. But man, him taking over a social media platform as large as Twitter, owning that, kind of deregulating to a certain degree. When I say deregulate, I mean freeing up, censorship, allowing people to share freely information without being slapped on the wrist or warning labels being put attached to everything, and censoring free speech and snuffing out conservative voices. When that got opened back up again, it was very easy for people to get their own news, to check it with what's going on in real time, and then you can start really seeing what's going on and calling some of these other news networks, mainstream media, calling them out for what they were, which is frauds or propagandists. And at the end of the day, I think people are starting to make up their own minds. The downside is it's a little too late. It may be enough to get, President Trump reelected. It may be enough for people to start to see the flaws in our government, but I think so much has been allowed to happen to erode the foundation of our country. It feels like we're past the point of any type of return.
Well, we're not
just
past
slowly
that point.
crashing.
I don't believe. I believe that right now we're just in a full-scale civil war, and the American people don't know it. The judiciary is at war. The executive branch. You never see Trump with the Bushes.
Oh yeah, they don't.
All right, with Clinton, you never see him with them because there's a war.
Mm-hmm.
There, obviously, you need to see what's going on, and what they're doing is and we did a program, Dystopia, before. But in the dystopian model, the psychologists say that 20% of the people can be easily hypnotized like that by using certain trigger words. You repeat the word over and over, racist. Racist, when most people can't define the word racism.
Yeah.
Ask people like what type of government we have, they don't know. Ask them what type define racism, they can't do it. What they give you, they give you discrimination, they give you prejudice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also stereotypes. But most people don't even know what racism is, but he's a racist. Racism, for definition's sake, is the belief that your race is superior to another. That's it. What you do, that's something totally different.
Yeah, but the definition is even more nowadays. There are people being intellectually dishonest, but now they'll say racism only applies to white people because they are in the quote-unquote position of power. That's another conversation, another theory in and of itself, but they think a black person, for example, could not be racist because they've in America, they've never been in a position of power. So they've redefined the terms, which has created more confusion. And now you got old people arguing with young people about the same term, and they're one group is grossly misapplying it. And because of that, they're not communicating. They're talking in two different places.
Well, historically, racism is given to those who have the power to exercise on others their will and their purpose.
That's what they did with it.
But however, there are black groups, black Hebrews, black Israelites who make certain claims that they are the ones of God and they're highly favored,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so on, and they're superior. But if you believe in that sense, yes. But basically, when it comes to racism, when it comes to American history and segregation and lynchings and race riots, etc., it refers to those who have the will to exercise that authority. Not just the belief, but the exercise it.
Right.
But the definition on its own is the simple idea that your race is superior to another.
Exactly.
And to take that to a higher level is ethnocentrism.
Mm-hmm.
Ethnocentrism not only your race is superior, but also your culture. So we want to make everybody in the world just like America.
Right.
And so you try to force that on everyone. But back to my point about hypnosis, 60% of the people, we're told, can be hypnotized with some persuasion. And that's how repetition, multiple media platforms, video games, music, and movies kind of program people subconsciously, and they don't even know it. There are 20% of the people who will resist hypnotism and are very hard to be hypnotized. These are the people that didn't stand up for righteousness' sake. They don't go along with the media. They don't go along with either political party. They're independent thinkers, and they're the minority, all right? Because everyone else generally goes along with the flow. So through the subconscious conditioning, they're able to manipulate people through programming and news outlets using certain metrics, and they know how to do that to their target audiences. And that's why we're so divided today. The masses are very susceptible to hypnosis, and using such trigger words like racism, a word like Trump, automatically Trump. People respond, you say the word Trump, and they respond
MAGA.
one way or another. Yeah, MAGA. I mean, what's wrong with making America great again? Well, the opposite of that, destroying America? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
I remember when the term first came out, you heard the quick comeback, well, when was America ever great? Or you want to take it back to the 1950s and 60s when they had blacks, being mistreated, and you want to take it back to the slavery days? I understand that part, but America pulled itself out of its own problems, out of its own mire. They created a system that actually forced them to get back in line. It was us upholding the Constitution. It was Abraham Lincoln listening to the will of the people. It took a legitimate movement by God and godly people to convince leadership that fighting against slavery was actually a noble and just cause. And we corrected ourselves. One of the few, if not only, countries to ever pull ourselves out of our own slavery practice. And that's an impressive feat in and of itself. That was what made America great. But I think that message was either lost by the message writers or misinterpreted by the people receiving the message. And now you have this divided crowd who they're not really listening to what is being said when that MAGA message is being
cognitive dissonant.
Yeah,
the woke movement.
Yeah, exactly. They want to insert their own belief system on top of that, and then they just run with it. But yeah, it's silly, but here we are.
We're in a very strange predicament right now, and that is that most people are so polarized that they cannot receive any information from the other side. It's only then that you understand your other side, you can civilly discuss and talk about an issue. And so I highly recommend people look at C-SPAN. Don't look at what the news say about what happened. Go to C-SPAN, look at the actual House and Senate hearings.
But it's boring.
It's boring. That's why they're so ignorant. They don't know nothing. They subject themselves to propaganda. Another method is politically correct. This is a form of shaming, by intimidation, saying if you don't believe like I believe, you're homophobic, or you don't believe like I believe, you don't like this, or you don't like it. No, I just don't believe what you believe. It's just that simple. And you begin to label people. You can label people. You can't control people. That's what I learned from some Holocaust survivors in Miami about 35 years ago. When people label you, they can then control, but don't accept their labels.
You're saying some of the Holocaust survivors, when you had a chance to talk to them?
Yes, I did. We take our students in school, in our classes in Miami, to Miami Beach and meet Holocaust survivors. This was back in the 1990s.
Gotcha.
And so it was very interesting. I learned a lot when I went there. Also, my many trips to Israel. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. and in Jerusalem and many other places as well. All over the world I travel. So I understand what's going on. But the sad part for me is that the tactics are very subtle to eliminate free speech. And you must have free speech or open communication, like what's going on right now on the college campuses concerning Hamas.
Yeah.
In Gaza. Gaza's found in the book of Judges. David was there in Gaza.
Been there.
Going back what? Let's see, 30, 32, 300 years ago. King David. So what I'm saying is that people need to study history. They need to take off their blinders and gross ignorance and learn history and learn how their own government functions. Then they won't succumb to the propaganda that's given to them by others. Here's some great wisdom. I think that for America to be civil, we need to do this here. The controlled masses, they vote for their party. All right. But the informed, they vote according to issues and policies. So they make informed decisions. If you do not make an informed and educated decision, not based on your party, then you will not be manipulated and like cattle herded from your churches, put in buses and taken down to a voting booth because you're just a warm body.
Do you think it's possible for us as a country to get back to that point? Or is that too idealistic? Because we got a pretty ignorant population.
Let me put it this way. The religious but godless. No, I said the religious but godless. They're religious, right? But they don't know God. They basically go against their own religious beliefs. They claim to be Christian, for example, but vote for political issues and parties that go against their own religion. They call that an oxymoron. It's a contradiction. It's a moral dilemma.
Like people who vote for the Democratic Party who are overwhelmingly pro-abortion.
Pro-abortion, or maybe even allowing illegal immigration, or the Bible speaks emphatically in the Old Testament and the New Testament about homosexuality and same-sex marriages, and they still vote for the Democratic Party anyway. Their problem is that it says, God says in his word, but I believe. They are slated for a judgment day, and they don't understand the consequences that your belief structures is what determine your eternal plight in this life and in the life to come. So I think people need to come to a resolve that whatever they believe, they need to carry that out to the fullness of their creed and not be hypocrites in the voting booth, at the voting polls. Whatever they believe, that's fine. But they need to live to the fullness of that creed, lest God judge them for being hypocrites, and especially minority people.
Right.
Those who claim that they're quote-unquote Christians, but everything they vote for is anti-Christ, anti-Bible, and anti-Christian. And the pastors, the pimps in the pulpit, beware, because there will be no slack for them in Judgment Day. But they are not Christ's ambassadors. They're ambassadors representing their own selves, their organization, their political parties. And as a result of that, they are hirelings, hired to do the will of the one opposite of Jesus Christ.
That's a scary position to be in, because I know the scriptures say judgment is going to begin in the house of the Lord. And when he comes back to judge his church, he's going to start with the pastors. He's going to start from the leadership.
First with them.
Work his way down. Exactly.
1 Peter 4, 17 and 18. And then the unrighteous in the pews, if this is how the church was supposed to be the salt and the light, this is how they function, then I think you're right. There is no hope for America. If there is no light in the church, and it is in darkness too, America's in a hell of a mess, because we're all in a bad place right now. And this country is doomed. The light must shine. And it's not Lucifer either, what the Freemasons and others would claim. I'm talking about Jesus Christ, the light of the world, according to John chapter 6. So let's take now a little lighter note, back to the Constitution. All right. Trump passed an executive order to stop illegal immigrants, okay? And that was interesting, all right? And as soon as Biden got in, within an hour after sworn in as president, he went and reversed all of those executive orders to create sanctuary cities and states to have a Trojan horse invasion in our country and illegal immigration on steroids to bankrupt our nation and bring crime and everything to our cities. And people still believing that's right, and they're still going to vote for this. I guess the oligarchs, they're saying, how dumb can people be?
Let's keep pushing the envelope until they push back.
And they're not pushing back.
Not enough.
Because they're going with the parties. Or is there spiritual blindness? You think that God allows people to become blind so that they will not be able to see, though they have eyes, and they can't hear, even though they have ears, that like Judas, they would do the will of God for their own destruction.
Well, I think Democrats in particular have been very clever in their approach, because identity politics became a thing. It became about the LGBTQ movement, hate speech, all these different causes that honestly shouldn't, and gay marriage, for example, shouldn't impact the average person to the degree in which they state it should. But for whatever reason, you align your party with those, and then you kind of handcuff your audience. I have a healthy amount of respect for the gay and lesbian community who are conservative. They vote sometimes against their own practices, their own agendas, their own policies of people like the Democrats who will say that they're championing the causes of the LGBTQ plus community. Black conservatives, Hispanic Republicans, these are all people who, if you just based on the sheer numbers, they're kind of going against their own demographics, the way of thinking. And they're doing it because they are voting on principles as opposed to voting on personalities, like you see in some of the presidential candidates. The number of women who vote based on just whether they like the person or not. Doesn't matter what policies they uphold. Doesn't matter what their practices are. Doesn't matter the laws they're trying to enforce or
The
pass.
color of his eyes, his teeth.
It's young. Seriously, it's attractiveness. That factors in.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's interesting to see just how willing and how far they are able to go to take advantage of people who just vote on single party issues. And if it fits one particular cause, I don't care what else they do. If they have some legislation that's going to help some black people, I don't care what else is linked to it. I don't care what else is riding on that policy. It doesn't matter if it undermines the Constitution. Doesn't matter if it undermines the will of the people. Doesn't matter if it opens up the borders to an invasion of people from outside with nefarious intent. At the end of the day, they're a single issue voter, and they don't care what else is attached to their party. That is the problem that I don't think we can avoid at this point.
Trump was president once, so the claim that he's going to become a dictator, he wasn't the first time.
Yeah, 4 years.
In fact, during his first 2 years, he made America the greatest country on the earth economically. But then the globalists decided to torpedo that by sending a global pandemic to put out the fire. All right. And so I perceive that if Trump was to be elected again, that they'll probably try to do the same thing again. Either this time maybe a war, they will start somewhere in the Middle East somewhere. The forces that tried to take him out will probably force something in his hand. They may create another pandemic. They would do maybe, how about all those Chinese soldiers that have been brought here? All it takes is 5 or 6 of them to sabotage a little small nuke in several of our cities to throw everything off and sabotage our nation, already planted there by our government. Anything can happen to economic disaster that's already set with $35 trillion in debt. All the things are already in place. They can sabotage anything he tries to do if he wants to become president because they already have the mechanisms in place against whatever we want to accomplish. America must be destroyed. And the American people, because they've been put against one another, like Khrushchev said, that this right bastion called capitalism will fall right into the hands of the communists without firing a shot. Because we will implode from the inside. And that's exactly what is going on right now. We're imploding, and we're also seeing some people are probably glad that Trump was they probably wish he might have been killed.
Oh, yeah.
The hate has gotten so bad in our country, they cannot see even to that point. And God help those who try to do that, because things are coming out that's not good. Remind me of JFK, remind me of RFK.
You lived through both of those.
I remember both of those, 63 and 68, the assassinations of both a presidential candidate. And also, recently, Putin killed one of his presidential rivals last year. We had also
former Japanese
in Haiti. In Haiti also, the president there was assassinated. So what I'm saying is that we're becoming a third world country, right, in suits. We're acting like an uncivilized nation, and we need to reel it in, get back to God, loving our brother, and doing the right thing for everybody. Let God be the judge. He will be when this nation is judged. But in the meantime, we have to bring civility and some type of understanding and peace amongst the brethren, especially in the church. If the church has no light, again, the whole nation is doomed. Not supporting Trump to the point by which he's just a good example to use, because they've been against him like a hound dog, almost like Elvis Presley singing. Ain't nothing like a hound dog.
But Donald Trump is he's smoked it out of him though. I think he's like an adjutant. He is
their nemesis.
Exactly what
the
they
swamp you are to expose. The deep state. He said that up front.
Yeah.
Most people
they
don't
didn't believe
know what he's talking about.
That's true. But he is the right person with the right temperament. Almost man, he's bold almost to a fault for a lot of different reasons. You can say that, but he has exposed just by his mere presence the things that he's willing to do, the things he's willing to say, to finally to get people to realize just how broken and crooked the system is. Again, I still think it's probably a little too late, but I do think if and when he gets back into power, there could be a small window of relief. I think for every punch, there's a counter punch, and there may be some temporary relief in these next few years, but then who knows what the long-term plan looks like.
Right.
I know the book of Revelation says how the world's going to end. I know at some point a one-world government has to be set up. What takes place between Donald Trump getting reelected potentially and this new system being ushered in, whatever that timeline is, the series of events that lead up to that, only God knows. But I guarantee you it's not a pretty story.
Okay, well, let me do some quick news flashes and kind of wrap this up. Call it a wrap for tonight, okay? Here, number one, 7 years, okay? For 7 years, the Spygate investigation by Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama with the use of this FISA courts, our secret courts for espionage. They submitted 4 false pretense warrants based on lies done by the FBI, all right, and these presidents I just mentioned as co-conspirators so he cannot run, all right, initially, and to take him out of office. It did not work. In fact, the FISA court, they never prosecuted the FBI. They never dealt with Hillary. None of them for the things they brought. The 7 year, all the millions of dollars was spent trying to get him indicted. They claim he was a Russian spy. Adam Schiff, Schumer, and many other, and Nancy Pelosi, all in the take as well. So some of the greatest threat to our country, what we call their democracy. We allow these people to be reelected and stay there, and the people keep voting them because they're not informed. The great news is that the Chevron doctrine that they use, where they give the government the upper hand, I believe that the FBI, the CIA, when it presents information, is accurate and true, and the citizens and others, they don't stand fair shake in the course of law or Jewish prudence. Well, it was revoked. Good news.
By the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. On June 28th, 2024, in the case Relentless Inc., Department of Commerce, and Loper Bright Enterprises, Bus Ramondo, the Supreme Court ruled that whenever an agency coming before the courts from now on, whoever comes against them, the government no longer has an unfair advantage. That is monumental, and nobody in the media is talking about that. The Chevron doctrine that was established back in, I think, in 1994, it has been rejected.
And so it's essentially closed off the door to all these unelected officials, outside agencies, people being able to serve as the quote-unquote final decision makers.
Yes, look up the Chevron doctrine. This is the most important decision. It gives me and you as citizens the right, at least, to plead our case without the government giving the upper hand on us in the court of law. You can use this in your defense. Trump was impeached twice. The second time illegally by the Senate while he was out of office. The kangaroo trial was officiated unconstitutionally by the president pro tem of the Senate, Patrick Leahy, all right, the puppet, all right? And the purpose was to try to stop Trump from running. Why is it easy to use Trump in this? Because everything they tried to do is unconstitutional and try to get rid of Trump. And like a bulldog, he is relentless and not giving up.
Yeah, I give him
January 6th, soap opera. There's a difference between a grand jury and a jury. A grand jury where the prosecutor comes and presents the evidence before the jury and say, jury, is there enough anything to indict or bring charge against this person? They say, yeah. Why? Because the defense never present any evidence. I listened to on C-SPAN, the Secretary of Homeland Security come up and question was asked to him, how many asset agents of the government, CIA agents, were in that crowd, instigating that crowd?
On January 6th.
On January 6th. He says, I can't reveal that information. I can't say that. In other words, that was a staged event, right? If you're going to have a coup d'etat, you will get the 6th branch of the military to take over the whole city of D.C., bring the helicopter, bring the troops in. That's how you do an insurrection. That's how you do a coup d'etat. And you take the major cities. Then you got to take care of Langley, the CIA headquarters.
Right.
This is crazy.
But people
how
feel
you
for
form a coup d'etat, French word for oath of a government, with a few little linky-dink people running up there, instigated by the government.
Ushered in, welcomed in.
They could have took care of everybody on that. There's no way in heaven or hell.
Nancy Pelosi.
That they could have not, her or not her. The government has ways to neutralize everyone there.
Of course.
If they wanted to.
Nancy Pelosi refused, didn't send the additional enforcement.
I'm not even talking about, I'm not talking about troops. Our government has ways they could neutralize everyone from the Capitol building all back to Lincoln Memorial if they wanted to.
But they didn't want to.
Okay. So, but anyway, the drama is only set up to create more contention, more strife in our nation. All right. And so what we have is, while they're complaining about January the 6th, and the only information in support of the Democratic stance that he led this insurrection, they did not allow testimony to the contrary to come to their hearing. They didn't even allow other Republicans to sit down the hearing. They blocked them from participating.
Oh, yeah.
A grand jury is you only get evidence from one side. A jury, you hear all the evidence, you make a decision based on all the facts with witnesses on both sides. That did not happen on January 6th. And secondly, the flash mobs, shucks, in 2020, all those flash mobs, they were burning down cities, burning down police station, killing people, rioting, everything else. And they said they had the right to express themselves. That was burned down in America. And it went on for a whole year. And they said that was okay. It's like, ding dong, I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's like,
People are waking up though. They're seeing the contrast. They're seeing the difference. They're seeing the difference between how conservatives express frustration. They're also seeing the difference between how liberals express frustration. Antifa, people lining up. You remember when it seemed like Trump was going to win? And I don't know if you remember this, but they were when everyone went to bed, Trump was ahead in the polls. Antifa was starting to line up. They had people outside starting to get their riot gear ready. They knew something was going on. People were starting to line the streets. Windows were starting to be boarded up. The next morning, we all know what happened. The big spike in all the votes and the tallies, and all of a sudden, there's a million different reasons. But Biden wakes up and he's in the lead, and the next thing you know, he wins the presidency. Well, all of a sudden, all these protesters, they disappear. They recede into the hedges.
They're flash mobs.
Oh, yeah.
If the government wanted to crack down on Antifa, they wanted to know who financed and paid their salaries, right? All they do is get their cameras, get their cell phones, look at their cash apps, right? Find out who sent them the money, look at their bank accounts. But did the Democrats do that? No. Did Republicans do that? No. They were not interested in neither party because they allowed it to happen. Okay, they're flash mobs. They're paid performers, paid by the government, and they're like the brown shirts, as expressed in an earlier broadcast, like with Hitler Jugend and the SS troops in Germany. That's exactly they had in Germany called the Night of the Broken Glass, but in Germany, immense hatred for Jews, and in one night it totally changed everything. But when I look at what's happening in the news, when I look at all the things, the persecution against Trump, and how all this is set up, is just utterly amazing. That right now, if you cannot beat him in the polls, you can't beat him, I guess, in the street, you're being 94 charges against him. 94.
The lawfare.
Yeah, 94 charges. Then you have an attorney who was rejected by the Republican Party, denied the right to become a Supreme Court justice, appointing him, until Merrick Garland, as the Attorney General, a disgruntled one against the Republican Party, and for the past 4 years been screwing all the Republicans because he'd been asked to grind using Department of Justice against the Republican Party rather, and also to illegally prosecute Trump with the Supreme Court right now. It's finally being to call him out on the illegal appointment and the process, the Constitution again being denied and undermined and also not followed. And what do the other media say? They're making Trump king. They're covering for him. No, they're just abiding by the Constitution versus activist judges.
But the problem is you have judges who are also Supreme Court justices who've made some terrible comments. And
it's three of them on there.
Yeah, it's the big three. But they're questioning the antics, and that's just throwing more. Or they're questioning the motives of the other Supreme Court justices, almost undermining. Because even back in the day, even if you had justices who were appointed by Democrats or justices who were appointed by Republicans or conservatives, they all got together, and they're Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was really good friends with Clarence Thomas. They got along well. It's a very tight-knit fraternity. They understand each other's struggles, and it's a very difficult job, probably the most important job in the country. But now it's more divided.
Even they begin to divide.
Exactly.
As you kind of wrap this up, I want to just cover some basic things. Number one, Supreme Court, which is the ultimate referee, all right, has infuriated the liberals, or those in the Democratic Party claiming that the Supreme Court has given Trump immunity, all right, in his immunity case, that he can become a dictator and he cannot be prosecuted. All you need to do is go online and read the Supreme Court decision. It says limited. What he does personally, he can be tried for. And if he does things that are against the Constitution in 4 categories, what are those 4 categories? Treason, bribery, high crimes and misdemeanor. Those are grounds for impeachment. Yeah. It is still in the Constitution. But if you're an American citizen and don't know your rights and don't know the Constitution, and we ignorantly tell you, you go like a parrot and repeat it. They make the man, he's no longer the president. He's a king. He's a dictator, and he can do whatever he wants, and he can't be prosecuted. And that's what MSNBC, the worst of them all, just pumps
immediately right out of the gate
every day.
Yeah, they don't add a disclaimer. It has to be official matters of the president that he's immune from. They lump everything in there, and then they come up with these crazy scenarios. Well, he could shoot somebody and get away with it.
I mean, are you really? They really think people that stupid that say that the president can shoot someone and get away with it. So what I'm saying is,
yes, people are that stupid. They're repeating it. I've heard it with my own ears.
Oh, you really?
Yeah, but they believe it because they heard it on the news.
Explicitly stating, clearly stated, 6-3 decision, he has limited immunity. Mm-hmm. Also, the claim that Trump wants to make abortion legal in every state. Well, in the Dodge versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case back in 2022, it said that the Supreme Court kicked the decision back to the state. The president is the enforcer of the law. He can't override a Supreme Court decision, and he can't override Congress. So how in the world these lying people can come around and say that he's going to take away abortion in every state? That's what I'm saying. That people need to go and read a 6th or 7th grade textbook and learn about the Constitution, so it won't be so easily
influenced and swayed and
take the cheese and the bait and be caught in their rat trap. This is so ignoramus. It is unbelievable how the masses in America are so undereducated and so ill-informed that they can believe minutia like this here.
Well, it works.
Think it's legitimate.
That's how we got to where we are. We are a reflection. Our leaders are a reflection of the people, and the leaders who are appointed, elected, it's the exact same thing. We put them there.
Well, back at the end of Nazi Germany, the Nuremberg laws were passed whereby which the government could not do experiments on people. Back in January 2022, the Supreme Court also ruled that the president, by executive order, could not mandate vaccinations through OSHA. All right, and the Supreme Court ruled against that as well for the American citizens. This is called corporatocracy and fascism, when you have the government working through corporations to control the people. Mm-hmm. That's how Mussolini in Italy, that's how he ruled this nation. President Trump would have been assassinated if he didn't turn his head. I was driving from Macon, Georgia, and I heard it on the news. It reminded me of Martin Luther King, who said one of his famous speeches that most people don't know about. He was stabbed in a New York City bookstore, and he said, if I had only sneezed, he would have died. Sometimes it's God's providence. I hope that, I don't know what type of religious beliefs that President Trump had, what his agenda was, but he owes his life to something higher than himself.
Amen.
And whoever may be yanking his change and controlling him, he need to cut those shackles too and pray to God to get direction for this nation. But we know, you said the counterpunch. Whatever do for positive for this nation, there's going to be a counterpunch from the globalist.
It's coming.
So we can expect it. The question, what would the American people do when we have a Barney Fife type police department in Butler, Pennsylvania, working the Secret Service? Or was it perhaps a botched assassination attempt of the former President Donald Trump in prime time by a corrupt criminal government syndicate? That is yet to be seen, to be explored, and investigated.
It assumes a fair and accurate investigation.
But time would tell us. We remember about the Warren Commission. We know a lot of things that happened in the past.
Yep.
Right? Ironically, the only time socialist networks will cover a Trump rally will be after his assassination attempt. The other parties never see what Trump say or does. They only hear opinions about what he said, and they take clips of what he said, never in context. Therefore, I highly recommend that people look at Euronews, the BBC, Al Jazeera, which is Muslim, I-24, that's Jewish, Sky News, that's Australia, Nigerian, Caribbean news. Just get a flavor of what other people saying about America.
Cool. Go. There's alternative news sources on the internet. A lot of podcasts. You can get some quality information. And one thing that I do recommend to people, especially if you're looking, because you can be like, man, I don't even know where to start. There's lots of good podcasts that are out there, and over time, you will find some who will consistently get things right. They're reporting the correct news. Maybe some financial predictions that are made. Reading the leaves on what's going on in the geopolitics or economics, and after a while, you'll start to realize, man, this group has been lying to me the whole time. This other group has actually been giving me the news straight.
Whether it's preachers in religion or politicians in parties. Stop believing the lies. Do your research, because it will determine your eternal plight. Your religious decisions in the ballot box, God sees, and he will know what you stand for him or against him, right? And also politically, likewise, and religiously, if your doctrine, Jesus said, these people honor me with their mouth, they confess me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. He says, in vain, these religious people worship me. In vain. Why? Because they keep the traditions of men rather than obeying the word of God. Solomon Asch. Asch did the experiment called social conformity.
The power of the masses.
The power of socially controlled manipulation of the masses. Disinformation, misinformation. Solomon said that reality is not what you see in the experiment. Reality is not what you see. It is what we tell you. So, with all this being said, do you think you can pass a civics test? I think you can.
I can.
The 3 branches of government, checks and balances, and they are there to keep this country great. I will say this. No one is trying to break out of America.
Amen.
Everybody is trying to break in. Antifa hasn't left. Black Lives Matter hasn't left.
Half of Hollywood is still here.
Nobody, all of Hollywood is still here. All right? They can travel all around the world. They come right back here. So don't believe what they say. Look at what they do. Don't believe the lies they tell you, but use critical thinking skills and get some common sense.
Thanks for joining the Salt Block. If you like the content that you just heard, feel free to follow along by hitting any of the in-card links above. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe. Most importantly, leave some comments, hit that notification bell.